And so as the international community works with those communities, with the governments, to help secure better livelihoods, they need to make sure that what they're doing on adaptation to climate change is integrally related to what they're doing on development. Adaptation and development really do go hand in hand.
Chanankulo C is an urban neighborhood in Maputo, Mozambique. More than 150,000 people live here. However, there is only one drainage ditch. When torrential rain caused by the changing climate became frequent, the neighborhood became prone to flooding. Worse still, people had thrown waste into the drains, and the flooding spread the waste around the neighborhood. This led to malaria and other illnesses, particularly among children. Establishing awareness and communication channels among the local citizens and between the municipality and the relevant institutions was very important. Public-private partnerships empowered the people living in Maputo to design and implement activities to adapt to climate change. The local people proposed a construction project to clean the ditch, allowing it to drain properly, and to manage local waste. In the Netherlands, 60% of the country is vulnerable to flooding, which means that there is a need to plan for the future. There they've developed the Delta program. Its aim is to protect the country against high water levels and to ensure an adequate fresh water supply. It looks 100 years ahead and also includes measures to deal with more immediate problems.
Climate change, for example, is affecting the frequency of floods. So communities that used to experience a 1 in 100-year flood may now be experiencing a 1 in 25-year flood. What does that mean for infrastructure? We're spending a lot of money on building roads and bridges. And if we don't take that change in the frequency of flooding into account, we may build a road or a bridge in an area that is really at risk of flooding in a way that it wasn't before. Why not take that new information into account, move where you build that road so it's on safer ground? That investment today will actually save us money in the future. There are studies that have been done that show that $1 in preparedness, $1 in forethought will actually save $4 to $7 in response. And what we as the international community need to do is start thinking about spending that money today in order to save that money in the future.
People living in the Bangladesh Delta are extremely vulnerable to problems caused by erosion, soil salinity, frequent floods and cyclones. The population here is dependent mostly on rice cultivation for their food. In a nationwide project, the women of the community started developing practical solutions to adapt. They raised dikes for ponds to preserve fresh water all year round. They stopped saltwater intrusion into canals, and they built a bunker for their own safety during cyclones. Thus, they have come up with their own solutions to ensure their own survival and security of food and water supply. Using their own initiative, the women have created resilience for themselves and their community. The effects of adaptation can be immediate. However, people in vulnerable areas need help to access resources, including financing and knowledge. People can develop creative ideas and innovative solutions. They can build partnerships with local administration bodies and organizations. Building climate resilience and a capacity to adapt provides more than just climate-related benefits. Its influence has beneficial effects for individuals, families, communities, countries, and society as a whole.
If we don't adapt, we threaten to roll back decades of progress in reducing poverty and improving economic growth. It really does compromise the stability and security of communities and countries. So we have an opportunity to act now and to make investments in adaptation that will have an impact in terms of the future.
We also have to see this as an opportunity to transform society, an opportunity to learn from the mistakes that we have made and be able to build better so that we can have a future for us and for future generations that is safer, that has the same opportunities, and that is better for all.
Very often I get asked, well, and what if we don't do that? What's the plan? What are we going to do if we're not able to address climate change? And the simple answer to that is, we don't have plan B because we don't have planet B. We have one planet. And so plan A is we are going to address climate change. That doesn't mean that it's easy, because if it were easy, we would have done it. But none of us can hide behind the responsibility and the commitment that we all have to do this, and to do it in a timely fashion.
Deltas around the world all face the same challenges in relation to climate change. And alongside mitigation, adaptation is urgent. And I think it is time to adapt now. And not only in the Netherlands, my country, but worldwide.
If we don't adapt to a changing climate, we'll not have our beautiful island for our children and for our children's children. So it is very important that we make all efforts to ensure that this future is secured. For the survival of islands like mine, we have to act and act urgently.
Any impact on climate change will affect our economy and our people. Our people have been adapting to climate change ever since they have been inhabited. They are finding their own ways. But I think they would need urgent actions by the international community, because the path of the changing of climate change is something that the people alone cannot cope up with.
We need to make lot investment in adaptation. We look at adaptation cost not only as cost but as an investment. And people in Bangladesh and in my region trying to adapt to climate change by experiencing, by developing floating gardens, floating schools, floating education system, so that we can face climate change in a far better way. But we have to receive a lot of support for making our communities, our ecosystems more resilient to adverse impacts of climate change.
In Malawi, addressing the challenges of climate change is very key to sustainable development. As such, the government is prioritizing addressing adaptation in such a way that we are developing policies and programs that will help to identify critical adaptation needs.
Africa is one of the most vulnerable continents to the negative impact of climate change. So the way we see it is working with communities, increasing their resilience, and empowering the communities would mean building the capacities of the different members, and particularly the women, the elderly, and the youth, because their vulnerabilities are increasing with climate change.
Europe, like the rest of the world, is increasingly challenged by climate change. There are increases in extreme events such as heat waves, floods, and drought. And this needs to be addressed. And what can we do about that? We have to change our paradigms and goals that informed decisions in the past. We will have to deploy new technologies in order to reduce the risks of climate change.
It's no longer just polar bears who are feeling the effects of climate change. Fierce storms, unseasonal heat waves, and rising sea levels are starting to affect us all. And yet, people and assets are being concentrated in hazard-prone areas. In 2013, weather and climate-related disasters led to 19,000 deaths and $125 billion of economic losses. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions is a must. But governments, businesses, and communities also need to prepare for a changing climate. But what does this look like in practice? Copenhagen is creating new green spaces and waterways to deal with cloudbursts that can dump 15 centimeters of rain in just 2 hours. This reduces the need for expensive drainage upgrades while providing space for recreation and nature. In Toronto, new large buildings are required to have green roofs. These help to keep the city cool during the summer, with a 5 to 15% reduction in electricity use while keeping buildings warm during the winter. Australia is the driest inhabited continent on Earth, so every drop of water
Located in one of the driest regions of the world, Morocco is increasingly vulnerable to climate change, drought, and water scarcity. Its population is largely dependent on agriculture and at risk to extreme heat and weather variability. It is only fitting that Marrakesh will play host to the international COP22 climate conference, which will raise attention to these issues and the countries around the globe that increasingly find themselves in similar situations. The Adaptation Fund is helping vulnerable communities in developing countries, like the Oasis Zone in southern Morocco, to adapt and build resilience to climate change with concrete, localized projects.
لأن هذا هو المشكل اللي يعيق لنا ما يدار، ولكن نقدروا نسمحوا فيها. علاش؟ لأن ما بقاش المحافظة على هذه البيئة هذه.
Le projet d'adaptation au changement climatique aussi d'avoir des modèles de projets intégrés auxquels il y aura la participation de l'ensemble des catégories de la population. Donc les enfants, les collégiens, les femmes, les jeunes, les agriculteurs, la société civile, les acteurs, autour un peu de cette thématique, parce que les oasis, c'est le lieu où on ressent en premier.
The Adaptation Fund project in Morocco is helping vulnerable populations build resilience to drought by enhancing their adaptive capacity to generate and manage water in a sustainable way. Through an innovative program, it is rebuilding a traditional system of water channels first developed by the Berber people 2,000 years ago. These canals will be used for both agricultural irrigation and community consumption.
الله يكثر خيركم. السد إرادة تيت مازير هاو تيت يوسي ترفض غير ترفض مجا غنا الومان إرادة يستقر البشر دا راه تقي من ميدن سنفضل تروان دوامان دي الدار. الله يكثر خيركم. ترواد هاد تموت أنت تريد تروان الفيض تستقنا خفتها هادو راح تضيع تدغن الحي تمازير تدغن غادي 3 كيلومتر مشى تياتش عندنا كيلومتر مشي هاو تاين تموترم تغلى يكثر خيركم الكلي هانت رواد مجا غادي يسنى الومان هادو يمكن لو ديال دي فخت مازير تدخ الداير الومان او ديالو نادي فخت مازير تدخ قد زايد نميد نصورنا هذا ربعاني غير ما يستفاد يشتركواد غور نغامي كان اي تسرود امي ماريغن ازقور كلشي انا نصيب نسندا ربعان القصوره.
La zone de Tijdad, c'est une zone qui est déficitaire en ressources en eau, vu le manque des précipitations et la surexploitation des ressources en eau sur terrain. Et dans ce cadre-là, dans le volet de l'adaptation au changement climatique, donc on a fait le montage de ce projet qui pourra mobiliser des ressources en eau de surplus pour satisfaire les besoins à court et à moyen et à long terme dans cette zone au profit des agriculteurs via la recharge des nappes et la recharge des retars. Donc sur le Oued Tudra, on va réaliser un barrage souterrain sur cette section. Donc on va faire une tranchée de 2 mètres et une hauteur de 3 mètres en moyen, ce qui va permettre de ralentir la vitesse d'écoulement de la crue et par conséquence l'augmentation de la surface de contact des eaux de surface avec la zone d'alimentation de la nappe. Et comme résultat, on aura une augmentation du niveau de la nappe et la recharge artificielle des retards.
Le plus important, c'est la quantité d'eau qui arrive au bassin. Et donc en fonction de la quantité de l'eau qui arrive dans le bassin, c'est là pour la superficie qui va être irriguée dans la palmerie. Et plus la superficie est irriguée, plus la production est importante, plus la population en bénéficie.
الاستفادة القنية اللي شرب الخير نومان هذا غتزيد نومان زا إيران بدنا تستفد بزاف مزال تسيغ معنا المثال قناري هذا سيغ 10 قناطر أديني من دي يا سيدي الخضار دي فرخان.
The project is also diversifying jobs through farming cooperatives and women's associations while building awareness of climate issues.
منطقة جافة ما يصدق فيها إلا التمور خدام فيها الراجل والمرأة والولد والبنت قبل ما تكون عندنا هذه الوحدة كل فلاح حتى يحرث بوحدو ويبيع بوحدو. جات هذه الوحدة وتنظمات ونفعتنا باش نستافدوا من هذيك التمر فوضى حنا نظمنا روسنا.
نتشكر الحضور بزاف، نتشكر رئيس الفيدرالية، نتشكر رئيس النزوة، نتشكر رئيس الفلاحة، كلشي المهم يدخل الدم كون نتشكر بزاف. الحمد لله سي نبدا الجمعية.
We have been able to witness the enthusiasm and engagement of all the executing partners. Each of them is contributing financially to the project, so that witnessed the strong engagement of Moroccan associations in climate change adaptation.
We have an oversight of the portfolio of the Adaptation Fund projects, and we visit them with the implementing entities, and we try to share lessons with the public and with also other projects on similar issues.
Morocco was also the site of 2 recent Adaptation Fund regional climate finance readiness workshops aimed at sharing knowledge of climate issues faced by Middle Eastern, North African and Francophone countries. They were designed to foster best practices on accessing climate finance and developing effective adaptation projects that promote environmental and social principles.
I come here to share my colleagues, their experience, and give my experience to my colleagues in other countries. There's many different natures of projects. I learned about the projects in Morocco. I have heard about projects in other countries.
The workshops also highlighted the fund's pioneering direct access modality, which gives developing countries the opportunity to access climate finance and develop projects directly through accredited national implementing entities, while building their own capacity to adapt to climate change.
The existence of the direct access modality means that we have the confidence to approach a fund on our own behalf to access resources. It means that every penny of the resources made available is made available to the country for use in the country.
The Adaptation Fund reached an important milestone when it was included in the Paris Agreement, adopted at the COP21 climate conference last year, which stated, "The fund may serve the agreement, subject to a process that has already begun and will continue at COP22 in Marrakesh." This verified the fund's value in providing effective projects and innovative programs, but it's imperative that this process continues with another positive step forward in Morocco.
The Adaptation Fund has 2 objectives for COP22. One is to become one of the funds serving the Paris Agreement and contributing to its operationalization. And the second one is to achieve financial sustainability so that the fund can continue addressing the adaptation needs of developing countries.
The importance and priority of adaptation relative to mitigation was also elevated in Paris. The ambition for it will need to be further accelerated at COP22 in Marrakesh to meet urgent and growing adaptation needs.
Climate change extreme events are more and more frequent, so the urgency is greater and greater. It is important that this momentum generated by the growing trend of giving more importance to adaptation and centering it at an equal footage with mitigation as part of the global response to climate change. If you want to learn more about our work, please visit the Adaptation Fund website.
This is Earth, the planet in our solar system that we live on. However, our planet is not on a good path for continuing to sustain life. The Earth is facing the accelerating detrimental effect of climate change, also referred to as global warming. Well, what exactly is climate change? Climate change is defined as a long-term